Well, we're back for more. Welcome to Not Every Single. I'm Joe.
And apparently I am Darcy.
Yeah, all the comments on the last video said you look like Darcy.
A lot of comments. I guess the hair.
Yeah.
And the makeup that I had.
It's kind of a dark lipstick.
Yeah, I think it was really similar to her. But actually, my name is Stephanie.
Yes. I'm Joe. That's Stephanie. This is Not Every Single. We did a video on ATUM Act 1 by the Smashing Pumpkins. Mm-hmm. We kind of gave our background on the band. I am very, very familiar with the band, but exacerbated at them, I guess is the best way to sum it up. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate. You're kind of less familiar with their whole discography, but felt similarly about this record.
Yeah.
And most of you agreed. Most of the comments said, yes, this is not the best offering from them. Some of you disagreed and actually loved it. Someone said, I've listened to it 100 times, which
that's commitment.
I cannot imagine. I did not go and subject myself to Act 1 again. I just jumped right into Act 2.
I've listened to Hooray 100 times.
Yeah, someone's listened to Hooray that many times.
I mean, every song has people that like it. I'm glad
that might be someone's favorite song.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's fine. That can be your favorite song. That's okay. But it's not mine. And how'd we feel about Act 2? Marginal improvement, maybe?
It's hard to say because I never went back and listened to the first act, nor do I really feel like I want to. I'm kind of curious too, but
it kind of felt like we didn't do our homework. like we should have gone and listened to Act 1 again.
I thought about it.
I did not do it.
And I just didn't. Yeah. Also, the rollout of this is super weird because then I went to listen to it and it's all on the same album. Like they just added the second act to the first act. So I had to Google what the first song was.
Yeah, the whole rollout is strange. The way it's being entered into Spotify is kind of strange. And yeah, I did the same thing. I had to look up where did Act 1 end and where do I begin here? Mm-hmm. Going into Act 2, I wasn't optimistic. My expectations were just bottom of the barrel, so low. And maybe that helped my enjoyment of this listen.
Yeah.
I at least wrote down a couple cool moments that I heard, and I guess we'll start with the positives. I think that's always a good place to start.
Yeah, I did not have high expectations for this album, and then it starts. The first song is kind of it has a weird intro, a jarring intro to song start sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Then it starts. I'm like, oh, this guitar is really cheesy, and then after a while, I was like, do I like it? I kind of think I like it. And then I think I liked the whole first 4 songs pretty much.
Really?
More than I thought at least. And I thought Moss was really cool. I was the whole time I was thinking, wait a minute, what's happening? Do I like this? Am I gonna love Act 2? I can't, it was hard to reconcile if I really liked it or not because it was so just cognitive dissonance of what the music actually was that I was listening to.
Sure, I could get that. It's kind of hard to separate it from Act 1 and how negative we felt about that.
Right.
But we really did our best to be fully objective here. And I have to agree, I think Moss is this cool, dark thing. And I think it's a good balance of where they are now and what they came from with something like, say, Adore. I mean, I know it's not one of their early records, but using electronics in a similar way, I thought the drum machine pattern thing was really instantly interesting.
Yeah.
And it had some darkness in it that I appreciated that I really missed about this band.
Yeah. And it's funny because I really like some of the silly, this is a rock opera, so a lot of times it sounds like a musical or an opera or something you watched on the Disney Channel when you were a kid that was not current. It was old. You know what I mean? Some of those older songs from movies and things. And so I loved Moss. I love that it was darker. I found myself enjoying more than I expected some of the quote unquote cheesier sounds to it, and the way that they use, I know they've been doing it for a while, but the way the backing vocals are kind of pretty and very different from.
See, that's where we differ.
Yeah.
Because I am fully sick of the Katie Cole thing at this point.
Yeah.
They've been doing it since Seer. And when Seer came out, it was kind of this interesting, like, oh, it's kind of this like retro 70s style 3-part harmony backing vocal thing. That's interesting. But that was years ago.
Well, I never listened to Seer.
You didn't listen to Seer? Oh,
roast me in the comments.
Shut it down now. Gotta hear Seer. No, Seer's no. But it's more of the same. It's more of the same. They've been using Katie Cole in this way for multiple albums now. And by the time you get to Empires, and it's every single time he says the word and other words as well.
Yeah.
I'm just like so fatigued by it. And especially because when we went and saw that show, we saw them at a small show at Irving Plaza in New York City. They played Empires, and it was rocking. It was awesome.
Yeah, we were pretty psyched because Beguiled had been the single, and then Empires wasn't out, and they played it, so it was like sort of a sneak peek at that show. And we were like, oh man, could this be cool? Like, could it be like kind of heavy and rocking?
And what I do have to say about Empires is you at least, you hear some Chamberlain.
Right.
Jimmy's on there. He's actually playing. And you hear a little Eha. A little bit of James Eha whammy, which, again, something I missed from this band sorely. Is that how you say it?
Sorely.
Sorely, yeah. And now hearing just a touch of that was like at least refreshing and kept me going.
Give you a little hit.
Yeah.
Did you notice the lyric, "Zero can't leave well enough alone"?
Yes. And I'm not crazy about it. We'll cover this quickly because we spent a lot of time on it on the last video. But I think that Billy's saying that this is a sequel to Melancholy, Machina, and now Autumn is absurd. Machina was not supposed to be a sequel to Melancholy, and furthermore, I don't think Melancholy is a narrative story. I think that's been retroactively, he's George Lucasing it.
Yeah.
So to throw in like, no, it is because see when I say zero in this one, it's just like, hey, it's not. You're not fooling anybody by saying zero in the song. Yeah.
Any other positives that you want to really focus on? Some cool moments?
Well, I agree about the silliness. I thought that the silliness in Act 1 was kind of obnoxious, although there was actually a moment in Hooray that I did kind of like, because they have this song Autumn Nocturne that was a Melancholy B-side. It was sort of silly that way. If you're like a fan of the deep cuts, you know that one. And I kind of got that from that song. Anyway, Night Waves. Night Waves I thought was a better use of the sort of off-kilter silliness. And it had this cool delay guitar over top of it. I was at least a little bit more into that one.
Interesting, because I think that's where it started, the album started to lose me.
Oh, man.
I wasn't into it. Maybe I need to listen again.
I wouldn't. I mean, you can if you'd like.
I think I would listen to this again.
Really?
I think so.
Now, keep in mind, this is coming from someone who's never even heard like some of the seminal albums of theirs all the way through. I mean, it is a different, in a lot of ways, it's a different band. Like, I don't consider this like, it's not Machina, like with the trilogy thing. It's like Machina is so good. So good.
This is not like, this is a different kind of liking.
You're right. Something. It's a different thing. You're not saying
it's a masterpiece.
I'm choosing to listen to this instead of Siamese Dream.
Right.
It's kind of like wanting Domino's instead of like legitimately good, awesome pizza. It's like, I know it's not that, but I just kind of feel like this right now.
Well, and also just, I'm curious, like on a few listens, like, do I completely go like, oh, never mind? Or like, I stand by finding some of this pretty cool.
going from Night Waves to Every Morning, the first half of it, I actually appreciated how ethereal and sort of amorphous the structure was.
Okay.
Because so much of this album, you've been locked into these like on the grid drums, whether they are real drums or they're drum machines. Sometimes you can't even tell, which I think is part of the problem here. But when you get something that didn't have percussion and you could sort of hang out behind the beat a little bit, hang back, and synths could drift in and out, and it was a little more ethereal, that was nice.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't as into... I think I wrote that I wanted to like it, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking like first half of the song.
Yeah.
And these, keep in mind, these are... I'm trying to focus on just some little positive notes here. Now, Beguiled comes in. Now, does anyone else feel like this is maybe a different mix than when it first came out as a single like a million years ago?
I didn't note it. What's the difference to you?
I'm hearing more modulation in the guitars.
Okay.
Subtle stuff. I think it sounds a little fuller to me. More modulation on the guitars and like I think I forget which part, but yeah, the mix just sounds slightly different to me, which I'm into. I think it sounds great. We were positive on that song already.
Yeah.
But it's weird.
It's a little boring though.
And by now it feels like old news.
Yeah, and then it comes on and I'm like, oh yeah, this wasn't...
It's that song from 6 months ago.
This wasn't on the first act for some reason.
Yeah.
And now I'm hearing it again.
Yeah, like I heard it plenty 6 months ago, and to hear it again now on the record, it's not like a pleasant surprise. It's just like, oh yeah, Beguiled. That's right. Culling, that was kind of interesting because it had that Pink Floydness that the title track had that started off the whole record. I was happy to hear that come back because it's an interesting thing for them to do and a cool thing for them to do at the age they're at. You know, I think they've earned going a little Floyd. And the last positive note I had is for Springtimes, which I just said a nice somber closer. And
then it like acoustic guitar picking.
Yeah.
Like a minute into the song starts.
Brought it back down to earth a little bit.
Yeah, I think I like that as a closer. It seems kind of fitting. Overall, there's some cool stuff. There, even like the songs I don't like, it's true there are some cool little moments in it, which is kind of frustrating too. Yeah,
because it shows you... But it reminds you of what they can be, that they can be great, that they have been great, and that now they're not. And you're right. It's to turn all the positives into a negative. It almost makes it worse.
Yeah, and you bring up like Pink Floyd and like that kind of a vibe, and to me, this felt like. I guess fitting with the fact again that it's a rock opera, it felt like a sci-fi or not like a fantasy story, which I'm sure is kind of what he's going for.
Yeah, it is.
Like one of those like 70s concept albums, and they were never about cool things. They were always about like elves and things,
Yeah. From what I understand, I listened to some of his podcasts and I bailed on it pretty quick because I realized, hey, I don't care about the story at all. It's like a space story.
Yeah. So it is sci-fi.
Yeah. So it is a sci-fi rock opera tale. So I guess in that sense, hey, if it sounds like that, mission accomplished, maybe?
It's like, but it doesn't feel technologically like operatic. It feels fantasy operatic. It feels like Hobbit-y or like...
Oh, I see what you mean.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the lyrics are very like uncool type of... I think there's this weird dichotomy with Corgan, and we both... You showed me a quote of his about the there's no guitars in like popular...
Yeah, basically justifying the lack of guitars in the band now by saying, well, there's no guitars in the charts these days anyway.
But no one's doing rock operas these days. No one's doing these types of like these sort of like retro-ish, almost like, yeah, really flowery, obscure lyrics.
Yeah.
About gods and about, all these, the lyrics, there was a lot. I actually don't hate the lyrics.
It's something he's been doing for a while. And you're right. It begs the question, if you're worried about what's working in the charts right now, then why are you still writing like this?
Yeah, the lyrics and the melodies make absolutely no sense if he's trying to be more relevant. I don't think he needs to be more relevant. He sort of seems to be, over the last few albums, being indignant about the fact that people aren't receiving these things the way he wants them to, because he is, I don't know, it seems like every time he talks about it, he's saying something different.
Yeah, and that's man, it's been an ever-present thing in him for so long. In particular, since about 2007 when they came back and Zeitgeist wasn't received well.
Yeah.
Then it's like from then on, it became all about talking about what's in the charts right now, what's doing well right now, and trying to fit the Pumpkins into that in this sort of half-assed way.
Yeah, he's always either like trying to tell audiences like that they should appreciate what he's doing for whatever reason he invented, or like trying to figure out what audiences want him to do, and it never really works. It made me, as I was listening to the album, it actually made me think of Jack White as a contrast.
Sure.
Jack White, he doesn't really chart. He, as far as his albums that have come out, I remember, I think like Lazaretto was like the best selling vinyl of all time at the time it came out. He has a huge fan base. He did go a little weird with Boarding House Reach, but guitars are still always there. It's huge. It's big. He's doing these crazy tours. People love it. He has a huge fan base, super successful, doing his record label, doing his stores, all this stuff. He seems very fulfilled and happy. Recently got married. Seems like he's doing the best he's been doing since like maybe ever.
Yeah.
And he's doing this just phenomenal guitar stuff, really innovative stuff on Fear of the Dawn, mixing guitar rock with this sort of like controlled chaos. And like his song he did with Q-Tip was so like, oh my gosh, how do you even think of that? It's like, Corgan, you could do that.
Yeah. Jack White seems completely unconcerned with having a top pop hit and accepts who he is. And I think Corgan could use a major, major dose of that.
Yeah.
Just accept your legacy, accept who you are. You'll still be on the rock charts. That's fine. You don't need to be on the top pop charts.
And you can still innovate. And like Jack White's selling out tours. He's not playing arenas. He's like, I'm not an arena guy.
The arena thing seems to be a big point with Corgan.
It's a sticking point.
We've even experienced this where we tried to go to a show. We're like, why is this at an arena? That makes no sense. They're not an arena band anymore. Lo and behold, that show gets canceled and downgraded to a much smaller venue. And he's always trying to make it an arena tour. And even this recent Jane's Addiction co-headlining tour had problems selling because it had to be an arena tour.
And twice we've seen him in Irving Plaza. We've seen him at the Showbox in Seattle. And these small venues were incredible for the energy and the crowd and like the size of the venue. Like it was intimate and epic at the same time. It's like, this is where you're thriving right now.
Yeah. He doesn't accept that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Just do your thing. Do what you're good at and be a theater size band, not a arena size band. That's totally okay. They were the biggest band in the world for a time, but hey, it was a very long time ago.
To be able to make your living off doing music and touring is no small feat. And just because, you're doing like moderate sized venues doesn't mean anything. I think that's even cooler as a band to play those sizes of venues.
Yeah, I mean, that's our goal with our band. I don't really think our band could be I don't want to be an arena band. I'm not concerned with that.
Right.
So that's our armchair psychology segment. But I'm sure a lot of you can agree, and it's very frustrating to always hear these quotes from him about being concerned about what's going on at the top of the charts and why that dictates what this latest Pumpkins record is. It's always the same story, and it kind of renders any following statements sort of BS because you've compromised your artistic integrity by even saying that.
Yeah, then you have nothing to like be on your soapbox about because you already undermined yourself.
Exactly. And that's the Billy Corgan story. What did you guys think of Act 2? And to the people that love Act 1, that's cool. What do you think of Act 2? Is this just as good? Better than you could ever hope for? Let us know what you think. And we'll see you for Act 3 because you know what? This is a 3-part opera right here. Watch us go through this together. All right. This is Not Every Single. I'm Joe.
And I'm Stephanie.
See you later.
Bye.